It is 12 o'clock. We want to welcome everyone to Piedmont University. The topic of this webinar is finishing the semester strong, which is a goal we all share. I'm Terry Ellerby. I am a specialist for admissions and parent communications here at Piedmont. We're incredibly excited that you're here joining us today. We want you to know that we value you and we appreciate all that you do to support students. We understand. The purpose of this webinar is to help you so that you can help your student understand the resources that are available to them here at Piedmont. Today, you're going to hear from three people who are themselves tremendous resources for Piedmont University. The first person you're going to hear from is Ineke Dyer. Ineke is Director of the Student Support Services. She and her student success advisors, they help students with things like time management and study skills and a bunch of other things that Ineke is going to talk about. And then she's going to hand it off to Sean Williamson, who is Director for Counseling Services here at Piedmont. And he's going to talk about mental health related issues with you and the resources that are available there. And finally, we'll talk with Dr. Steve Jacobs. We actually appreciate Dr. Jacobs for suggesting that we hold this webinar, that we host this webinar, and we're very appreciative that he did that. We learned this week that he was named Dean of the College of Arts and Sciences, and we certainly congratulate him on that. He's also a professor of sociology, and he's going to get into kind of the nitty-gritty final exam, papers, projects part of the webinar. You can use the chat feature. You're probably familiar with Zoom to ask questions, and we will, at the end of this webinar, hopefully before the 1 o'clock hour, have time for questions and answers. And with that, I am going to turn it over to Ineke.
Hello, and thank you, Terry, for the introduction. Thank you all for being here this afternoon. We're thrilled to have you and talk a little bit about how you can support your students at the end of the semester here. So I was asked to talk a little bit about what we're seeing in student support services in terms of trends that your students might be experiencing. So when they come into our office, some of the things that we're seeing that they're dealing with right now at this point in the semester is burnout. They are hitting a wall. And so I think they are counting down to Thanksgiving Day. So they have next Thursday and Friday to kind of catch a breath before they go into the final exam and the wrap up of the semester. But they really are feeling like everything is coming due all at the same time, which is not uncommon this time of year. They also, we're seeing a lot of students who are struggling to communicate. So I just talked with a student who had the flu and actually were out of class for a week and a half, but they did not communicate that to their professors. And so they had missed an exam, they hadn't communicated, and the professor had like a 7-day window to make it up, and they had just missed it by the time they're back in class and had told them what was going on. And so I think ways that you can support your students are encouraging them to connect with their faculty, let them know what's going on in their life. Another student was in a car accident and had to be out for a couple of days to deal with her vehicle and not feeling well and, you know, sore from that. And so I think just making sure that students are communicating, letting professors know what's going on so that they can be supportive, because if they know, the faculty here usually are more than willing to support them, to be flexible with deadlines, and to help them kind of create a plan to make it up. So we're also seeing students who feel like, you know, I'm just so far behind. There's nothing else I can do, and I'm just gonna start fresh next semester. And so they've maybe stopped attending classes at this point because they feel like there's nothing else they can do. I just had a student this morning who was supposed to be in a class, and I said, "Why aren't you in that class?" And he said, you know, "I'm just going to study as much as I can for the final. And so I'm just going to show up to the final." And I said, "You have 5 classes left, 5 meetings for this. class. And if you're planning on going to the final, they're probably going to do a review of the final. They're probably going to give you tips on what to study for. So, you know, some of them are feeling like it's too late and it's hopeless. And I'm just going to start over next semester. So they might be feeling like that right now. And many of them are reluctant to get help. They might be embarrassed to talk to their faculty, especially if they're a first-year student. So many of them have not yet gone to office hours. And maybe Dr. Jacobs will talk about this too, but faculty have office hours for a reason. They are in their office during scheduled times, just waiting for your students to come in and ask them questions. So they want students to come and see them. So encourage your student to talk to their professors, to ask for clarification if something is confusing to them. And then I'll talk a little bit more about tutoring support that we have as well. But there's also a lot of students who just are having fun, and they have this newfound freedom, and many times they're not aware of some of the consequences that come with a really challenging semester. So if a student, if any of your students drop below a 2.0 GPA, they will find themselves on academic probation next semester, and they'll work with my office on a weekly basis. We actually require students on probation to meet with us weekly to really make sure they have accountability and that they have the skills that they need to recover their GPA and be successful academically. So we do see some students right now at this point in the semester who just, they're having a little bit of too much fun and don't realize with the GPA, if they have a really hard semester, it isn't the end of the world. We will work with them to try to recover their GPA, but it can be very, very difficult to get that GPA back up to good academic standing, depending on how severe their grades are this semester. So there can be loss of financial aid later on down the road if they don't get their GPA back up. So it really can be problematic if that pattern continues. Now, if it's just a blip this semester, okay, hopefully they can fix that next semester. But if it continues to be a pattern, then there really are some significant consequences which can affect eligibility. If they're an athlete, it can affect their ability to receive financial aid later on. So those are things that they just might not know about right now. Ways that you can support your student as they're coming home for Thanksgiving. I think it is good that they have some rest, right? That they rest their mind, they have time with family and friends, but they might also feel like after that rest on Thursday, if you see them on Friday, Saturday, Sunday feeling like they need to hit the books, that's okay, because they probably have a lot coming due right at the end here, and they really feel like they need to dedicate some time for that. So I think a balance of making sure that they have some downtime and can kind of regroup before finals, but they might also really need to dedicate some time for that. And so trying to be encouraging for them if they feel like they're in that position and they need to dedicate some time. I think it's important for you to have an idea when the final exams are. So I'll put the link in the chat too, but our final exams begin on Thursday, December 1st. So they're Thursday and Friday, and Monday and Tuesday, December 1st, 2nd, 5th, and 6th. When I'm meeting with students, I make sure they really understand the final exam schedule, because it's not uncommon for the final exam to be a totally different date and time than their regular scheduled class that they have met all semester long. So sometimes a student will have, let's say, a 9 a.m. class on Monday, Wednesday, Friday, but their final is actually going to be at 8 a.m. So that can be a surprise to them. And so faculty, I think, do a great job of telling them that, but I think it's important for you to know that the exams, are at a different day and time than they're typically used to. So making sure students are aware of that. And then just in general, they have this equation someone made up in terms of how much time should be dedicated for a student to be successful academically, depending on how many units they're taking. So they really recommend that for every unit a student is enrolled in, that they study 2 to 3 hours per unit. So that would be, if they're enrolled in 12 units, it would be about 24 hours a week, which is why 12 units of coursework is considered full-time. It really is, in addition to being in class, this really should be their full-time job. This is their full-time focus, is their academics. And so we see students who are working upwards of 20 to 40 hours a week, and that really can interfere with their academic success because they're not having that 20 hours a week to dedicate to studying and homework and reading and writing. They're having to work in addition to that. And so that's where we can see that their grades suffer. So I think just being aware of the time that really is recommended for them to be successful academically can be helpful for students as well. And then just to touch a little bit on the support that's available at Piedmont for them. All of our services are free to them. So we have one-on-one individual tutoring that they can sign up for. We have supplemental instruction, which we call SNAP groups, which are smaller groups where students can get individualized support in a small group setting. The facilitator of that is their peer, but that peer is also in communication with the faculty member. So they typically have access to homework assignments to see where they're at in a lesson. They have example to practice quizzes and things like that. And so they're very in touch with the faculty to help facilitate those smaller group instructions. We also have the Learning Center where students do study hall hours if they're an athlete, but it's also just a great place to study. And it's a place where if your student goes to study and they realize, oh, I feel like I need some help with this, we have tutors who are available right there that they can go up to the front desk and say, I need someone to help me with this. Is there anyone here who can assist? So our Learning Center in the study hall is a really great place for your students to study. And then we also have our student success advisors. So if your student needs help with creating a study guide for finals, they can come in and see us and we can help look at when they have their finals and help create kind of a study plan for that. We can assist with organization, time management, study skills, note-taking skills, exam preparation. So anything that's academic based, we can help them with that. So if they feel like they're struggling, please encourage your student to set up a time. They can schedule an appointment right in Starfish and we'll be available to them. A lot of students I think there's like a stigma attached to tutoring or getting help, and our tutors are very friendly. It's a very supportive environment. It really is not intimidating. So we encourage them to utilize that. And then I think anything additional you could do is, I think the students many times, especially if they're in their first semester, feel the weight of the world with what's coming at them with projects and finals. And so sometimes those outside factors like, you know, I'm taking away the car if you don't get this GPA, or you might not have a place to live if you don't get this GPA. I think there are these outside family pressures sometimes that just adds to an already stressful environment. So I think being supportive and encouraging of your student, I'm not saying don't have any consequences if they don't do well, but that could be a discussion maybe after the fact. So that's a little bit about what we do in student support services and what we're seeing. We're happy to support your student. Please don't hesitate to call me or email me if you think I can be of support in any way. And hopefully we'll see your student in the Student Success Center soon. And I'll turn it over to Sean.
Hey, everybody. Again, thank you so much for being here. I'll echo what Ineke said. This is really exciting and a wonderful event, and so appreciate you being a part of it. So I'm Sean Williamson. I'm the Director of Counseling Services, and I'm going to start off with a little bit about what we do and what we offer in counseling services here. So when we talk about counseling services, we're talking about mental health. You know, in high school, your students probably got guidance counselors. We're not guidance counselors. We're mental health counselors, and we have 3 full-time counselors on staff with a lot of experience. We've all been in the business for quite some time. And what we offer is short-term individual counseling, groups, and workshops. We also offer crisis intervention. So if your student comes upon a crisis, day or night, we can be there available for them to help them through that. And then like Ineke was saying about success, our services are free to your student. They'll never pay out of pocket for any kind of counseling that they do here. Our services are also confidential, and as I mentioned, we're all professional counselors. So it's a really, really great service to take advantage of. What I tell people all the time is that you'll probably never have another time in your life where you have free counseling available to you. So it's great to take advantage of. We also offer an online service for counseling, a 24/7 service that's available to your students for free called Virtual Care. And we'll talk more about that in a little bit and how to sign up for that. So one of the things that I wanted to get into today with you was some of the issues that we see in higher ed mental health and right here on Piedmont's campus, what we deal with. And really, anxiety and depression, those are always the top 2 things that we deal with. Anxiety is on the rise around the country in mental health, college counseling services. What we've seen over the last 6 years is a jump from 17 to 31% in college counseling centers. Students coming in reported rapid spikes in anxiety, depression. 60% of students saying that the pandemic has made it harder. So the pandemic really has had a big effect on mental health. Another study that I was reading said that 40% of students in 2020 were saying that they were so depressed they were having difficulty functioning. So that's again, another huge issue that we see. And then here, one of the things that we've been seeing in our counseling center is this idea of relationships and how to deal with relationships. Sometimes, students coming from a home where they had a room that they lived in by themselves are now rooming with somebody and having to navigate that relationship. That can be very, very challenging. Relationships with professors, making new friends, all these things can be very, very difficult. We've also seen a lot of students dealing with grief issues, and not just the loss of somebody, but the loss of experiences, things like, again, the pandemic and the difficulty that brought in not being in a classroom, not being around their friends, missing out on maybe prom or graduation exercises. Those things can affect a student very, very difficult. Sleep issues are something that we see a great deal of. And stress just in general is a huge issue as well. And we'll talk more about that in a minute also. Then some of the trends that we see across higher ed mental health is that college mental health clinics, again, are seeing these numbers rising. Faculty and staff are also becoming more involved in students' mental health. And here on Piedmont's campus, we have, I'm sure you've heard about this, Starfish is a wonderful tool that we have that connects all of our professors and staff, and they can raise flags about a student's behavior or mental health, academic problems they may be having, and there's a network that then is able to reach out to that student and help them get the services that they need. So faculty and staff can be very, very involved in that. Peer support also is something that is huge, and that we're developing more here. Students usually talk to their friends before they talk to a professor or a professional service. So their friends knowing how to talk with them and relate to them and where to send them. We have a group called Active Minds here on campus that is a mental health awareness group that's raising awareness about mental health issues, lowering stigma around mental health, and then equipping students to be able to talk to one another about the issues that are going on. And then, as I mentioned a minute ago, campuses across the country are incorporating online options like our virtual care that we offer here. Some of the barriers that we see with students in regards to mental health is time. They always feel like they don't have enough time to devote to everything that they're doing. Sometimes we call that the tyranny of the urgent. It's that, homework that I got to get done, and they're not really looking at the other things in their life that are going on that maybe are causing them problems. Then questioning the seriousness of the need that they have. They may be discounting the stress that they're feeling, because again, the third point here, stress is a normal part of being a college student. Well, sometimes we believe that, and don't get any help for that when, again, there's help available. The stigma around mental health, and as I mentioned earlier, that active minds, and I think just across our country right now, we're seeing the stigma of mental health being lowered due to the fact that so many people are talking about it and coming out with the issues that they're dealing with. I think that's a great pendulum swing that we're seeing. Finances, again, as I mentioned, our services are free, but if your student may need medical attention or medications, of course, that's not free. So finances can be a barrier to getting help. And then culture, as we know, sometimes culture can get in the way of asking for help. Being raised in a culture where, you're taught to pull yourself up by the bootstraps, or only our family knows about our problems. We don't go outside the family. And that can be a real barrier to trying to get help to our students. So that's something that we can work against. And again, as I mentioned, a significant number of students deal with mental health issues, but don't seek the help. And that's something that we're trying to really work against, is to make that help available, lower the stigma, help them understand that, their stresses that they're feeling, or that feeling of being overwhelmed, that is not something that you have to just manage on your own and get through. There is help available for that. So what can be done? Really the two main factors that we're looking at is reducing access-related barriers and then internalized beliefs. So, whether that's finances, time, raising awareness, addressing the stigma, reducing stress, or addressing those culture issues, those are the things that we want to try to concentrate on. In the next slide, it says, what can you do to encourage your students? As Ineke mentioned also a few minutes ago, these three areas, sleep is such a huge, huge issue. It affects every area of life, including mental health, physical health, spiritual health, academic health. Every area is affected by our sleep. So trying to encourage your student to stay on a schedule, get help with sleep when they're having trouble with it. Managing their diet, eating food that is healthy for them, that's good for them, not just living on junk food. And getting some exercise. That's something that you can do to encourage your student. Time management, again, as Ineke mentioned, we have support here to help them with time management. If they struggle with that, there's help available to them. And not just in the area of academics, but also with self-care and social events, putting those kinds of things on their calendar as well, so that they're addressing this whole person, not just their academic life, but also their social life and their own well-being. Getting involved with clubs and activities and workshops, the social outlets that they need. College is not just about being in the classroom, it's about developing as a whole person. So those clubs and activities and things that we do to support them that are outside of the class, help them to understand and encourage them to be a part of those things. Financial wellness, as we talked about a minute ago, that's an important part of being a college student and learning how to manage, your finances. And that can be a huge stressor, but it's not managed well. And then, of course, as we've already discussed, using resources like the counseling center, career tutoring, academic coaching. Res Life is a support to them campus pastors, coach if they're on a team. And then through the virtual care that I was talking about a minute ago, there is life coaching available, which covers a whole gamut, a whole huge area, from personal relationships to finances to academics, touches on every area of life, that they can have their own personal life coach that they can meet with for free. So you can also encourage them to look into that. So in the few seconds that I have left here, I want to read something to you that I found, and I thought this was a good little story to think about. As I think about parenting, I think about it as coaching. When your kids are small, you as their coach have them sitting on the bench. You're teaching them about the game. As they get older and start school, you're letting them into the game, but pulling them back to teach them and to coach them. And when they make a mistake, sometimes you have to bench them for a while and continue to teach and coach. As they continue to get older, you're sending them into the game more and more until finally they're out there on their own. And folks, that's where we are now. They're out there on their own. That's now. So they're in the game, they're out there, and now is the time to be their encourager. They're going to make mistakes. That's how they learn and grow. So let them make the mistakes and learn from them. Let them come to you when they need available direction. Let them walk it out. Point them through the door, but let them walk it out. Point them to the supports that they have available, as we've already talked about, but let them make the decision to use them. Love them, encourage them, be there for them. You'll always be their parent, but now as adults, you can also be their friend. So that's all I have for you. Again, I'm Sean. We'll take questions at the end. So if you have any questions about anything I've talked about here, we can talk about that as we finish up. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Steve Jacobs, and I am the Dean of the College of Arts and Sciences, and I'm also a professor of sociology here at Piedmont. And we appreciate you all being present and joining us this afternoon. We all have a common goal. We all want to see your students thrive and be successful. And so we appreciate you joining us in a conversation about how we can all help make that happen. And as I listen to Ineke and Sean, I just think about what a challenging time it is for a college student these days. If you take a look, as a sociologist, if you take a look at the data prior to COVID, things were trending in a problematic direction. But when we factor in COVID and the learning loss, the grieving of the experiences that Sean described, I think there's a lot going on, and it can be a difficult adjustment to Piedmont, especially during that first semester. We have some very high achieving high school students that come to Piedmont, and they're just, even in the best of circumstances, there are just unforeseen challenges that present themselves, especially during this first semester. And so one point that Ineke highlighted, and I would like to really push and encourage you to talk to your students about, is to take advantage of the faculty that teach our classes. We have faculty who are at Piedmont because they love to work with students, they love helping students, they love teaching, which, believe it or not, is not the case at all institutions that I have been teaching at. So office hours is a great time to have students pop in and talk to their professors if there are any questions, if things may not be going well in a course. Maybe they think, okay, I'm good in this history class. I did well in high school. I think I know what's going on. And then they take their first exam or their second exam and things don't go as well as they may have hoped. Encourage them to stop by, talk to the professor after class, drop into their office and have a conversation about what may be helpful to do moving forward. Our faculty are more than happy to talk to students and figure out what these issues are and help them be set up for a successful experience as the semester continues. We're now at a busy time of the semester. I'm fairly confident that when Abraham Lincoln established Thanksgiving as a national holiday about 160 years ago, he wasn't really accounting for the way that it would impact our academic calendar. So we go home next week for Thanksgiving to be around friends and family. And then after they come back, all of a sudden a week later from Thanksgiving, final exams start. So you may have sensed this in your conversations with your students, but there tends to be a lot of work this time of the semester. There may be not necessarily the final exam, which will take place during exam week, as Ineke mentioned, but there may just be, a third exam in the class that may take place shortly before the Thanksgiving holiday. There may be projects due in their classes. There may be essays, and these may be, especially I think when we think about COVID and how we all scrambled to put things online over the past couple of years, perhaps your students may have not had the experience to develop some of these writing skills in high school. They may be a little bit behind the curve on how they should construct an essay, how they should cite sources, that sort of thing. So again, we have resources on campus. This is my 11th year at Piedmont, and it's been quite a joy for me to see our support staff and our support services grow over these last few years to try to help our students navigate some of these issues that we know that they are experiencing. And when they are home next week for Thanksgiving, you may sense that as much as they would love to spend all of their time relaxing, which again is important, seeing people, maybe friends they haven't seen since the summer, they also may have in the back of their mind, or maybe it's at the front of their mind, they have this cumulative exam next week. And so they may want some time to focus to try to ensure that they get up to speed and prepared for those exams. Many of these exams are cumulative, meaning the content from the semester will be included on the exam. At the end of the fall semester, the classes they're currently taking will end. And then when they come back in the spring, they will be in new classes. So this really is the final few days of the semester, which tends to include a lot of work in their courses as they get everything done that they need to do. We've covered the student support services and counseling services. Again, it seems to me that the stigmas around getting help for these issues, specifically the counseling services assistance, it's still there, but it seems like we're getting better in terms of letting students know, hey, there are places you can go to get help. I think it's a real struggle for us and a challenge for us when we have resources and students don't take. Students just may, I think this is a characteristic of Gen Z, where they just may retreat when they're facing a challenging circumstance. They may feel uncomfortable, as we've discussed, to seek help, but we have the help there. And if you could nudge them along and encourage them to reach out to me, to their faculty, to anyone in counseling services or student support services, we'll help get them set up, and we'll talk to them, and we'll come up with a good plan to help them be successful. Starfish, as you've heard, is a software that we all have access to. We use it to share information about students because we have a number of different partners on campus who all are on the same page of trying to help these students be successful. But students can also access Starfish. They can use Starfish to ask for help. If they're experiencing a challenge, they need help, they need assistance, they don't know who to talk to, they can put something in Starfish and we'll get them to someone who can help them out. Starfish also does communicate with Canvas, which is our learning management system. And this is meaningful because when students earn grades in their classes, they take an exam, they turn in a project, they submit an essay. Once their professors grade it, they will put their grades into Canvas. And so when a student logs into Starfish, they can actually see their grades for their classes. So they should have a sense of how they're doing in their classes. And we encourage faculty to regularly keep those grades up to date so that at any given moment, students can be aware of what their standing is in the class and then make that determination as far as whether or not they may need some additional assistance. I can't emphasize enough, encourage students to talk to professors, go to office hours, talk to them after class. If they see their professors in the hallway walking around campus, say hi, stop and ask questions. Their professors will be more than willing to help out. And just the stories I could share of what some professors have done over the years, just really going above and beyond to just ensure that students are best set up for success. An additional contact that is very important for a student would be their academic advisor. All of our students have an academic advisor. It is most commonly a professor in the discipline that the student is majoring in. If they don't know who to talk to, have them talk to their advisor. This person is quite literally, in many cases, the best person on campus, and frankly, the best person really in the area who can help guide them through their program, have them consider possible internships as students begin to think about life and their careers after Piedmont. The advisor can play a crucial role in steering them in that direction. But if there's an issue in a course, a student doesn't know what they should do, Can they drop the class? Is it too late to drop the class? Can they withdraw? The advisor can sit down with them and help give them that advice on what they can best do to be successful. Another point I wanted to mention is if your students have any questions, or frankly, if you have any questions about policies, procedures, what it is that we can do, what is the withdrawal policy, can a student take a graduate course, can they take courses at another institution over the summer if we don't offer it here? All of these policies, academics, they exist in that catalog. So if you go to piedmont.edu/catalog, you can download the catalog for the current academic year and you can look through it. And it has more information than you would probably ever care to digest, but many questions can be answered there. Of course, a student can certainly ask their advisor as well, but let's say they're majoring in a program this fall, they came into Piedmont to major in this particular program, and maybe it's just not what they had expected. Maybe there's an intro course and they're just not really having a good feel for it. Maybe they're thinking about some other options. Maybe they want to look at some additional alternative programs. Maybe they're taking a history class or a psychology class for general education credit, and they realize, wow, I really enjoy the subject matter. Maybe there's a minor that the student is upper level courses in the coming years. All this information about our policies and procedures, but also our academic programs, our courses, descriptions for courses, all of this is in the catalog. And so if your students are not aware of how to access it or what information may be there, just that simple link should get them there, and they could access a lot of the key information that they would want to have. I want to highlight a few points that are coming up. Again, as I mentioned, fall semester is somehow rapidly coming to a close. I'm not sure what happened to 2022, but apparently it's mid-November already. Once exams finish, students will go home for the break and then come back in January, and that will begin a new semester. They will have a new set of classes. They should have already met with their academic advisor and picked out a plan for the spring. They should have a full-time schedule of courses, and they should be registered. If not, they should certainly do so ASAP and make sure they're registered and make sure everything looks to be on point. And the advisors can confirm that all of those classes make sense. There probably will be a class or two for their major, and then they also will most likely be taking some additional general education courses at this point if it is their first year going into the second semester. I want to also draw your attention to a couple of what we call high impact practices that we have been offering, and we've been focusing on them for the past few years. These are activities that promote hands-on learning. Deep learning is a term in education and literature that they use to describe it. And we have found them, and it's not just us, but really it's a national trend. These are really effective forms of learning. Students who participate in these types of endeavors, they tend to do better than students who don't. They're more likely to make progress through their programs. They're more likely to persist to graduation. And so a couple of them that I want to draw your attention to and highlight are going to be, number one, we call it the Piedmont Symposium, which takes place in April. And this is an opportunity for students to share with the campus community what it is that they're doing, what they're learning, what they're creating. We tend to get a number of upper level students, maybe students in their senior year, who are going to present their capstone research, but it's open to all students. It's open to first year students. Maybe there's an essay they wrote, maybe there's a poem they wrote in an English class. Encourage them to get involved. It's such a great experience if students plan to go to graduate school, to be able to present their work and just have that experience of presenting it and fielding questions about it is just such a good experience. Sean talked about some of these communication barriers and communication issues that students have. I think for a number of reasons, maybe it's because of a lot of time we've spent learning on Zoom. Maybe it's because we like to communicate using our phones rather than face-to-face. This type of experience, both in our classes and also in more formal presentations, could be a challenge for them. They could feel very uncomfortable standing up in front of their peers and their professors and the campus community and presenting their work. And I often encourage my students to try to become a little bit more comfortable being uncomfortable, because I think, unfortunately, many of us, we don't do things because it makes us uncomfortable, and we prevent ourselves from taking on experiences that would be quite helpful and quite productive. So talk to your students about the symposium, have them submit something that they're doing to present it in front of the campus community, and families, of course, are welcome to attend on that day as well. But it really, I think, would be a great way for them to begin to get involved in academics, and whatever they can do on campus really to get involved could be quite helpful. During the first year, it's so important for students to form connections, to feel a sense of belonging on campus. And so whatever activities they can get involved in would be excellent. If they were, for example, a SAIL participant this current academic year, maybe they can help out on the other side of it for the next academic year. I also want to mention we have openings on our summer travel study trip to France. So it's available to all students, first year students included, if they may be interested in earning 6 hours of course credit for spending, a few weeks, a couple weeks, 10 to 14 days in France, taking an English literature as well that would address their gen ed requirements. So these may be courses that your student needs, and for about the cost of what it would cost to take those 2 courses over the summer or online, they could actually go to France. And it's really, I think, a generous model the university offers, because we understand the value of travel and what students get from it. As a sociologist, I often tell my sociology students, don't get me wrong, these classes are delightful. I love them. I think they're good experiences. But if a student really wants to get into sociological inquiry, really wants to learn sociology, go somewhere different and just look around, talk to people. So this is a great way for students to have that experience. And we essentially take the trip. So fare, hotels, admission to museums, food, it's all included to try to make it more cost effective for our students. And they tend to be really effective and really impactful experiences for them. So encourage them to get involved, to walk around campus and to find activities for them to be a part of. If you have any questions about classes or anything that I might be able to help you with, please feel free to reach out to me, call me, email me, and I would certainly be glad to answer your question, or at least do what I can to steer them to someone who may be available to address those questions. So if any of you have any questions related to academics, we would certainly be glad to talk through and answer those for you at this time. It's really, I think, hopefully a good opportunity for us to have a conversation about what can help our students be effective and successful.
It looks like we should perhaps hold a webinar with Residence Life to answer Michelle Lockett's question. But I have a question, if that's okay, Dr. Jacobs.
Oh, of course.
We often tell parents to advise their students to go to their academic advisor. Would
Yes.
you tell us how that is assigned and what happens if a student doesn't declare a major?
It's such a great question, because I think we throw around terms like academic advisor sometimes, assuming everyone knows what they mean. I think sometimes students don't know what it means to have an advisor, to be advised. They maybe have a relationship with a high school counselor and they kind of maybe think that's the role of the advisor, but the advisor is assigned based on the student's major. So they come into Piedmont with a major, we will assign them an advisor in that area who oversees those students and could really give them the best advice. They're aware of the requirements for that program. They know what courses they need during the first year, the first semester, and they also know what types of activities might be helpful for them to explore. If they're, say, a biology major, they may recommend, these SNAP groups have been really effective for our students. So that may be a way to go and help them get that additional expertise. So it's typically someone in some students major, they come in and they're exploring their options. We have a number of advisors, specifically Professor Jeff Bowers, who is our award-winning advisor who specializes in students who are still looking at some options, and he can help guide them. We have some resources available to career services, can help students try to figure out what is the best major for them. I think sometimes we have ideas of what a good program would be for our students, and then it may or may not be a good fit. So I think sometimes the key is what is the right program for them? Maybe it's the one, maybe since they've been 7, they've been dreaming of being a biologist and they major in biology and all works out well, but maybe sometimes they have a major in mind and then it just doesn't seem like the right fit. And then help direct our sociology not come to Piedmont as sociology majors. They tend to find it somewhere along the way. Maybe they try out a number of different options first. I changed my major a number of times. And so I often encourage students to just be open to other possibilities. It's hard sometimes to know when you're 17, 18, 19, it's hard to know what you want to do with the rest of your life. And sometimes, and we know too, that what you major in, it doesn't necessarily determine what your career trajectory is going to be. That said, if you want to be a nurse, you should probably major in nursing. But for a number of other programs, we major in this, then we start working for a couple of years, we get a job in a totally unrelated field. Maybe we go back to grad school for something else. So there are often a lot more possibilities available by majoring in a particular program, but it also is one that a student's interests may change over their time at Piedmont. And I think it's really important for them to find, as soon as possible, we have them take primarily gen ed courses over the first couple of years. And a great feature of that is that they can change their major and they're not losing any time because those credits will still count when they change majors. Those requirements will still be addressed. So we try to keep things flexible and nimble in that way. And sometimes students are juniors, they end up in my office and they're concerned about their progress and how they spend 2 years in the program. It's not a good fit. And I tell them, look, it's better to figure this out now than to graduate and start working for a couple of years and then have to do something different. We have some students who actually come back to Piedmont with a degree from somewhere else in another discipline. And it's, if only earlier in their time during their undergraduate education, they could have really kind of explored, what is it that I want to do? What's the best fit for me? So the advisor is a great person to help them figure out, hey, is this program really a good fit for you? Or maybe there's a different program that would work better. And I had no idea what I wanted to do with my life when I was 18. I've answered some of those questions, but not all. And so I think we have some folks on campus who could really help students clarify some of those questions because they're really important ones.
That's great. I don't see any questions in the Q&A. Ineke and Sean, did you have anything you wanted to add? I'm hearing nothing. So
No, I feel like you covered it. But if there are any other questions from parents, we'd love to hear them. And I did put the contact information for our Director of Residential Living, Madison Smith, in Michelle's questions, so that if there are questions for residence life, feel free to reach out to her and she'd be able to answer that for you.
wonderful. Thank you for doing that, Ineke. Okay, hearing no more questions, I think we're going to conclude it right here. And Ineke, Sean, Dr. Jacobs, we so appreciate you taking time to do this, and we very much appreciate the parents and family members who joined us in this webinar. We hope we'll get to do it again sometime. So thank you.